You might wonder, why talk about gender equality? Because gender equality is good for children, it's good for women, and it's also good for men. Because women do not have their full rights. We're still fighting, just to give you an example, for equal pay. We're underrepresented in high positions in the government, in corporations, and in certain fields of studies like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In some countries, the rights of women are still ignored. I am sure you can think of many countries. For girls in developing countries, they are raised to be married and have children. This means that as soon as they reach puberty, they are made to leave school. That is so detrimental, not only for their health and because of their lack of education, but it has an impact on the economy of the country, because girls' education is key to economic development. Men are not free to express their sensitivity. They are put in the box. From the day they're born, you're a boy. And then you mustn't cry. You must be strong. You must tough it up. And so what's happening here is that the active or masculine force is predominant in the world, which causes an imbalance. Take a look at this picture. This is a picture of a world out of balance. It represents the meeting of the G20 in Germany last year. This is a forum of the 20 most industrialized and emerging economies. They represent together 85% of the economy of the world. And look at this, there are 35 people here, and only 4 women. Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, Theresa May, Prime Minister of the UK, Erna Solberg, Prime Minister of Norway, and Christine Lagarde. She's from France. She's the head of the International Monetary Fund. And what happens in a world dominated by the active or masculine force? We have armed aggressions, wars here and there. We have violence. In this country, we have a huge problem with gun violence. There is domestic violence. Oh, sorry. Domestic violence. And also violence against people who do not fall in the box of one gender or the other. I heard about a case where there was this person who I think was an A gender. We don't know if they're neither from one or the other sex. And she was dressed as a girl. She came back from school and she was in the bus, fell asleep, and this group of guys come and see this girl sleeping and say, "Oh, this looks like a dude with a skirt." And they set the skirt on fire, causing severe burns. And the teenager who was the assailant ended up in jail for several years. Women are not respected, that we know. We've heard so much about sexual assaults in the workplace or other. That gave rise to the Me Too movement. Business are conducted in a ruthless manner. It's like people don't matter. What's important is to make a profit. So never mind that a pharmaceutical company makes drugs that have serious secondary effects. Until enough people have been affected and they start suing, nothing happens. Same thing with a fertilizer that is known to cause cancer, yet it is still produced and still sold because, again, what's important is to make a profit at all costs. We have human rights violations, and in this country we have a problem with, well, we still have the death penalty in some states, which is a human rights violations. Sometimes the national politics and international laws don't match. So not allowing transgenders in the military, separating families from their children are both violations of human rights. And we have environmental degradation. We have trash all the way up to in the Himalayas. We have plastic bags in the sea, huge quantities, and the poor whales don't make the difference. They just swallow it, and they accumulate them in their stomach, and they die. I just want to add regarding the disrespect for women that it is tragic to be sexually assaulted, very tragic. And it is even more tragic when the rape of women is used systematically during the wars, like is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's not the only times. I mean, it happened in Bosnia, it has happened in Greece, it has happened way back as far as we can go, sadly. Now, gender stereotypes are very harmful, and they start from the cradle. Baby boys must wear blue, they must be strong, they can only play with certain toys, and then men don't cry. Having refined taste is not considered very masculine. Baby girls must wear pink, they must behave like ladies, can't climb trees, that's for boys, it's not feminine, and ambitious women are not okay. It's okay, but up to a point. If it goes too high, no, 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 then she'll get all kind of nice adjectives. And children are smart, they get it. By age 5, they're in this box. But I'll tell you a story that I found on the TED Talk by a kindergarten teacher. One day, a young boy came in wearing a pink t-shirt, and his friend said, "You can't wear this, this is for girls." So the poor boy, luckily his father was there, but he sneaked out and he came back with a t-shirt that says, "I'm a hero." And he was allowed back in the school. So the teacher, who was very smart, took this opportunity, and she said, "So what is it that boys should wear?" "Well, boys must wear blue, they must wear black, and what do they play with? They play with trains and trucks, they play soccer." Okay, and she was writing all this. "And what about girls?" "Girls wear pink and purple. They play with dolls, they braid each other's hair, and they play princess." And all of a sudden, a little kid in the back says, "This does not make sense, because John is going to ballet and Sophie is playing soccer." All right, so the whole thing was reviewed, and then before that, the teacher said, "So what, does this make sense?" And everybody, "No, it is not fair." So they reviewed the whole list, and the next day, the little boy came back with his pink t-shirt, and the one who said it's not fair, it doesn't make sense, he came back wearing a princess costume. So children get it. They said it. We have to change the way we raise, especially our boys. We must do away with this binary gender. There are so many other genders. And we're in the era of space exploration and the World Wide Web. It is time to change. Now, seriously, what is at the root of gender equality? At the root of gender equality, as I understand it, is this polarity of active and receptive force which are in the universe. I draw from ancient Chinese wisdom that in the universe there are these primeval force, active and receptive. Human beings are part of nature, and whatever is in the universe is in human beings. Until the 17th century, the West had a similar view. Then things changed. Mind and body separated, human beings separated from nature, and even more so, they can dominate nature and exploit it. 400 years later, we're seeing the results. So I prefer the ancient Chinese view. The active force is what makes things happen. It is what gives the impulse, if you will. And the receptive is ready to receive it and give it a place to land. And it's in all human beings. Men, women, bisexual, transgender, gay, and lesbians. That's the equality that I'm talking about. And to give you a few examples, so condensation and evaporation, freezing and melting, the atom with the protons, which has a positive charge, and the electrons, which have a negative charge, and to use my vocabulary, active and receptive. In electricity with direct current and alternate current. In Taoism, with the Taiji, the white part is the yang, and the black part is the yin. And you see a little bit of white here and a little bit of black, which means that nothing is completely yin and nothing is completely yang. Further examples, in yoga, I learned that our organs are divided into organs of action: the mouth, the arms, the legs, and the organs of reproduction. And the organs of perception, our eyes, ears, our tongue. Plus, along our spine, we have these two nerve channels that carry the life force called prana. And the right side is the active or masculine, and the left side is the receptive or feminine. Carl Jung talked about the union of opposites to become a balanced person. The anima is the feminine and the animus is the masculine. Then this great author called Margaret Fuller, who in 1845 wrote a book called Woman in the 19th Century. It is a classic of feminine literature. She was a great author, most read at the time, male and female writers. She was the first woman to be allowed in the library at Harvard. She was part of the transcendentalist movement. And the way she described this duality is this: male and female represent the two sides of the great radical dualism, but in fact, they are perpetually passing into one another. Fluid hardens to solid. Solid rushes to fluid. There is no wholly masculine man, no purely feminine woman. So typically, the receptive or feminine is more present in women, and the active or masculine is more present in men. But there are cases, and I'm sure we see this all the time, where a woman has more of the masculine and a man has more of the feminine, and it's okay. So we have a choice of how we use this force. We can use them destructively or constructively. When we're domineering, have uncompromising and rigid attitudes, being competitive and speaking in a harsh manner, we're using this force destructively. And I'm not saying one shouldn't be competitive, it's just when it becomes overbearing that it is destructive. Instead, when we're being direct, self-reliant, and tolerant, we're using this force constructively. For the receptive force, when we're feeling powerless, not taking action, being subservient, submissive, and manipulative to get what we want, this is destructive. Instead, when we're being cooperative, when we let our heart speak, paying attention to our gut feeling or intuition, listening to other people, being nurturing and compassionate, we are using this force constructively. And what are the benefits of a more balanced world? We would have more diplomacy and less armed aggressions, because this is what happens when you talk with people. Everybody expresses their side. You negotiate an agreement until everybody is satisfied. Just like in a family, when you have a disagreement, everybody talks and you reach a compromise. I learned from a research that was made in 2015 that when women are involved in peace negotiations and conflict resolution, a peace agreement has 35% more chances to last for 15 years. The Secretary General wrote recently that we're not making much progress. There are only 5% women involved in conflict resolution and peace negotiations. The United States followed up on this resolution from the UN that required it. And last year, Congress enacted the Women's Security and Peace Act that required women to be involved in peace negotiations. I just want to make another example because it is so wonderful, of the women from Liberia who brought an end to 10 years of civil war. And there were women of different religions even, Muslim and Christians, but they were so fed up, so tired of losing their son, their brother, their husband, their father. They started to take action, but in a compassionate way. They all dressed up in white, and they were following it was Charles Taylor at the time, with signs, we want peace, until finally they got an interview with him. And they brought this war to an end. Charles Taylor was ousted, and they continued campaigning for the woman who was elected first president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So this is really a good example of what happens when a person uses these two forces. They were strong, they took action, but it was done in a compassionate way. And they persisted and persisted. So perhaps we would have better human resource practices, men and women would be paid the same, finally, and business could be conducted like people matter, probably more even salaries, instead of this big gap between the CEO and staff. This would cause quality life, because if you don't have to work for such long hours to make ends meet, then you come home and you can spend quality time with your family. Women would be more respected. I will say that, yes, with the Me Too movement, things are starting to change because men are caught. And also, when there are more women in the police, the response to sexual assaults is better. And women also are better at de-escalating violence and listening to people and communicating with people. Men will be out of their box. They will be raised as just human beings with, yeah, it's okay to cry. You don't have to be in control all the time. You don't have to dominate all the time. They will be raised just as people and fully participate in family life, cleaning, doing the dishes, raising the children. And it is so important for children to be equal, to have the attention of the mom and the dad on an equal basis. Now, how can we make a difference? Because this is why I'm talking about it. Well, now that we know that we have these two forces, we can simply be mindful and pay attention to how we use them. Asking ourselves throughout the day, am I being competitive or cooperative? Am I manipulative or direct? Am I feeling powerless or taking action? And when I balance these forces within myself in a constructive way, I am making a difference around me. And you take action to make a difference. And there are so many things that one can do. If you want to improve communications in your family or workplace, when the going gets rough, you can learn nonviolent communication. If you're concerned with human rights, you can join AmnestyUSA.org, sign up for their newsletter. They have letter writing campaigns. If you're concerned with gun violence, don't wait till it happens here, because it could. You can join mothersdemandaction.org. If you're concerned with climate change, join Mothers Out Front. And it doesn't mean because it says mothers that the father can't come. Men and women are involved, but because women started it, it's called Mothers Out Front. There's a group in Northampton. They meet every month, and they're all mothers with children, and they want to leave behind a healthy planet for their children, grandchildren, and future generation, and so on. If you're interested, I am leaving a leaflet with all of these links to these websites, plus other things that you can read. And believe that we can make a difference. As Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, said, never believe that a few caring people cannot change the world, for indeed, that is all who ever have. Thank you very much.